Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Esri National Security Webinar Series. The title of our webinar today is Cyber-GIS, Using Geography to Focus Cybersecurity on Mission Outcomes. My name is Carl Walter, and I am the National Security Industry Manager here at Esri. To tell our story today, which maybe not be a traditional cyber story, we're going to have a discussion that focuses on the relationship between mission, operations, and cybersecurity. Our example today will be a large planned special event, the previous Rio Olympics held in Brazil about 2 years ago. However, any strategy should not work just for a planned event, but for the unplanned events, critical incidents, and maybe even more importantly, for day-to-day mission. We think what we're going to show you today handles all three of those. Our talk's going to merge two worlds, the physical security world with the cyber, but it's not going to be about stopping attack. We know the attacks are going to happen. It's about using GIS, the analytical capabilities of the GIS platform, the robust visualization capabilities to mitigate the effects of a cyber event, to prioritize a response, to maintain or regain operational capabilities very quickly. And why do we think this is important? We want to share this idea with you that your cyber operations are just as important as your field operations, and the people that do cyber and the operators must be better connected. So if your networks are unusable, if your communications are down, your operations will obviously fail or be at significant risk. So prior to our team's careers here at Esri, we all sat in your chairs, either in the military, in the intel community, or in the law enforcement community. And collectively, it's fair to say that we were never really present in a significant way with cyber and mission together, again, as part of that same conversation. And maybe even more important, with our roles here now at Esri, supporting the defense community, the intel community, the law enforcement community, we're still not seeing a lot of those shared conversations. So for today's agenda, I'll introduce our team. We'll go through some of our session objectives and reintroduce, we've done it before, the concept of safe communities and establishing a safe community. We'll talk about mission and GIS, and then we'll explain what we mean by cyber GIS, and then hopefully at the end we usually have time for a few questions. So moderating today with me will be Brian Biesicker. Brian is our lead technical advisor to the intelligence community here at Esri, and our demonstration team will be Kyle Talbot and Kenneth Mitchell, and Kyle and Ken are both solution engineers for our national government team. Our session objectives again, so we're going to discuss basic physical security needs for a large planned event. We're going to show how cybersecurity must be connected at the planning process all the way through the operational phases of that planned event. And to tell this story, again, we're going to use the Rio Olympics as our example. We're going to identify what we call our area of interest in both the physical sense and the virtual or cyber sense. And then also part of our objective will be to start off with a discussion of what we mean by operational pre-planning. So the threat assessment that should occur prior to an event. So we're going to go over historical data and using historical data for threat analysis, how to bring in human intelligence, as well as how to bring in applications and data from the field and applications that we call see something, say something. We're going to actually create operational pre-plans and talk about that to discuss, resource allocation and how to secure critical infrastructure. And then we'll go into the cyber components, the operational pre-plans for the cyber piece and the actual planning and what we call IT laydown and cyber supply line. At the end, you should understand all those concepts. So we discussed the philosophy of safe communities. And I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about what we mean there. So by definition, a safe community is one in which all sectors of the community work together in a coordinated and collaborative way, forming partnerships to promote safety, manage risk, increase the overall safety of all its members, and reduce the fear of harm. So we have 7 questions here that we think communities should be able to answer to kind of determine if they are a safe community. And we're going to talk about 2 of these really specifically, but we're also going to discuss how GIS can support the answers to these types of questions. So things such as managing health threats and epidemics, whether it's Zika or the opioid epidemic, managing technological disasters like an industrial accident, preparing, planning, and managing large-scale special events, managing civil arrest and executing modern crime control strategies, preventing and responding to a terrorist attack, protecting critical infrastructure, both your physical and cyber, and border security. We're going to focus in this part on 2 of those 7 questions. Protecting your citizens at a large-scale event. Some past examples of some communities that use GIS in a very robust fashion to help manage the event. The city of Boston with the Boston Marathon, the recent Super Bowl held at 49ers Stadium in Santa Clara, and NASCAR events. All great examples of communities that use GIS to manage their special events. And on the cyber and physical security side, the Port of Long Beach is one of our best examples of how they're implementing GIS and sharing and creating shared situational awareness with 16 local, state, federal, and military organizations to better control port security in Long Beach and Los Angeles. So now let's get started with what we might begin for our operational planning phases for a large event. I'm just going to show a couple of examples of some of the things we might do. So one of the first things to begin our operational planning would be to conduct a historical review of incidents near our area of interest. So it could be crime incidents, it could be suspicious activity reports, field interviews, arrests, 911 calls, whatever that data is. In this example, we're bringing in robbery information by weapon, aggravated assault, and some property crime elements to see what type of historical information occurred around our area of interest, hotspots around our area of interest. Those are the trends that we're trying to determine. Next, we might want to dig a little bit deeper into a specific crime category. And in this example, we zoomed in on robberies and identified some robbery hotspots. And then again, in Insights, we linked charts, graphs, and tables together to really better be able to formulate and interrogate the data and create a historical picture of what some of the problems might be, again, most important in our area of interest. The next activity might be bringing in human intelligence information. And I'll say we don't see a lot of examples of informant management, informant data into a GIS, but in this example, we're doing just that. So the gray points on our map here represent the areas or the locations of where we have human intelligence, and we overlaid that with historical problem areas. So we know where we have human intelligence within either a crime problem area or our area of interest. Again, in this example, the Olympics. Next, we might want to enable the public or enable our field intelligence officers outside of the command center. So with a simple geoform, we've created a see something, say something application where non-technical, non-GIS, essentially operators can, from the field in a mobile environment, enter information about, for example, a suspicious activity that you want to document and share with the rest of the participants in this event. So you can vary with drop-down menus, all configurable, identify and submit suspicious activity, select a location, complete the form and submit that form so the people in the field, mobile, as well as the people in the command center are getting real-time information. And then finally, the final phase of some of the pre-event operational planning would to actually be able to create the operational pre-plan. So based on the threat data that we just discussed, I want to build my pre-plans on and start identifying, allocating where I might want to stage tactical resources. Again, based on the historical threat information, when the event goes live, I want to bring in real-time feeds to further allow me to edit and manipulate this pre-plan with, for instance, the see something, say something, suspicious activity coming in from the field, or whatever real-time data feed that might be. So we can manage this in a web app like we're showing here, or on a dashboard, and share this data once it goes operational. Maybe even more important, a lot of times this happens on a chalkboard or on a whiteboard. In this environment, it's happening in a modern application, right? So we can save everything that's done. Every time we edit this template, every time we move a tactical asset from one place to another, that information is saved, and we can use that for a couple things. After action reporting, to see if we did what we thought we were going to do and how we can do it better, or even to defend against lawsuits. Each operational decision is saved and can be played back and can be used in a variety of ways. So now that we have kind of properly set the table on the cyber components of this, I'm going to turn this over to Brian Biesicker, and he's going to, correction, we've talked about the mission components. I'm now going to turn this over to Brian, and he's going to talk about the cyber components of this conversation. Brian.
Thank you, Carl. So as you said, we want to introduce our concepts for Cyber-GIS. And what I want to do is start out by showing you a couple of key questions. So we believe the GIS can help you solve a number of things related to cybersecurity and even your IT outage and impairment information, especially related to your mission, your operations, or even critical systems and critical infrastructure. So what are the impacts to those missions, operations, activities, critical systems from a cyber attack or an IT outage? How do you prioritize the work of your IT team and your cybersecurity team in the context of your most important missions and operations? And then how do you provide shared situational awareness across all your organizations, not just your mission or operations organizations, but your IT organization and your cybersecurity team as well? So we'd like you to think about how we can reconsider cyberspace. Many people think that cyberspace only happens in a virtual world or in the logical world. But in fact, all the devices that are associated with your IT network and your IT devices do exist in space and time. They're owned by somebody. And geography can add a tremendous amount of value in understanding what's happening in the IT space and cybersecurity space. So by linking these layers, the logical network layer to the physical network layer, and then to the geographic layer, we use a capability called ARC schematic, which allows us to model both the logical network and the physical network and interoperate or interact with them together. That allows us to link all these things together and then connect that to mission. So not only can we do this for missions and operations, which are generally conducted by people and organizations, the information that flows back and forth between them is what we call their mission data. But we can look at this from a critical systems perspective and the connectivity and data that flows back and forth between those systems, and even critical infrastructure. All of those monitoring capabilities and systems and data flow over a set of IT devices and network connections. So by monitoring that IT network and device set of devices, we can actually then make a connection back to those missions and operations, critical systems, and critical infrastructure. So how do we do this? We've developed a concept we call the cyber supply line. So again, if you think about this in a mission context, we have a set of people and organizations that are conducting missions, and their mission data flows back and forth across the IT network supporting them. And when we overlay that mission data flow over that set of network devices and network paths, we create a cyber supply line. And this allows us to identify the most critical devices and network paths associated with any given mission at any given time. And then we can monitor those devices and network paths and link back to the impact on that particular set of mission and operations. So the way we do this is to take your GIS tools and data that you're using potentially already in parts of your organization, like your facilities organization or in your operations organization, say your public safety folks, police, emergency management, fire, etc. We add in your human resources data from your enterprise human resources database, and we can tie in the cybersecurity tools and data and the IT operations tools and data. And we can create an integrated set of data and applications using the GIS platform to do that shared situational awareness across all of your organizations. In this context, historically, quite often the IT folks may have a watch center that they are monitoring the IT devices and networks, but they are, for the most part, disconnected quite often from the operations or mission folks. Same with the cybersecurity folks. They tend to be either device focused or in a cyber threat event focused. The operations folks, however, are looking at their missions and their operations. And quite often these two groups have difficulty communicating with one another, especially when it comes down to impact, because the IT folks and the cybersecurity folks, for the most part, have not really thought about how they tie their activities or the things they're monitoring back to mission. So using that cyber supply line concept, we can make that connection, and then we can do that shared situational awareness for everybody, including the executives or the commanders in your organization. And we do this by applying just that set of tools and data from your IT organization and your cybersecurity team, which are represented over on the right-hand side of the chart, and tying that into your service-based architecture, your cloud architecture, or even into your existing systems that may not be in that kind of a context. But you have, again, organizations probably using geospatial tools for things like your foundation data, maps, and imagery for your facilities. You probably may be using it for some of your operational activities. In this case, we're showing what might be emergency services folks. And then in many cases, like in state and local government, using it for lots of activities related to the departments within the city or the state. So again, we tie all this together and we can provide what we call user-defined operating pictures using our operations dashboard. And that'll have a shared map view that everybody sees all the data at the same time, much like Carl was showing in many of the public safety applications that he showed in the slides earlier. And we tie that together with this IT data and the cybersecurity data now, and everybody has the same view of the entire situation at the same time. And then again, can link those IT and cyber activities or events to the mission impact. So now we'll move into our demonstration. And while we're getting the initial demo set up, I'll make an introduction of our scenario. So as Carl said, we're using the Rio Olympics from last summer, and we're going to take on the role of the chief of physical security for this major public event. And what we want to do is set the stage for that chief of security to be able to define a mission and then tie in our IT and our cybersecurity activities. So we're going to start out by giving you an overview of what our facilities folks have done for the build-up to the Olympics. So Kyle, I'm going to hand it over to you to give an introduction to our facilities data sets.
Thank you, Brian. So leading up to the Olympics, our GIS team has documented all facilities and infrastructure supporting the Olympic events. So on the current extent, you see a regional view of the greater Rio area and all of the Olympic venues. Those venues, there are 4 zones that are depicted. There's Barra da Tijuca, Copacabana Beach, Maracanã, and Deodoro. Next, I'm going to zoom into the Olympic Village to show that we have documented all of the buildings and features of the entire campus. The GIS team has used ArcGIS facility management tools to create a data set of the entire campus. We also have up-to-date high-resolution imagery of the area to confirm our locations. And then finally, I'm going to zoom into our security center to show that we have the building mapped and documented down to individual floors and rooms, as well as the individuals that occupy those rooms. Now, this is just one of our security centers, and it's located in the southern portion of the map here. There is an additional security center like this one up in the northeast corner of our AOI, which will come into play later in this presentation. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Kyle. And just like our GIS facilities team has documented all of the physical infrastructure from a facilities perspective, our IT team has also been doing their job leading up to the Olympics, documenting all of our IT infrastructure. So Ken, I would like you to introduce our IT infrastructure for the folks.
Thank you, Brian. What we're currently looking at is the wide area network of the IT infrastructure supporting the Olympic venue, and with the diamonds or nodes representing our key devices along with the fiber links between them. Now, using the facilities database Kyle just talked about, we were also able to capture and show the campus area network. And lastly, I'm going to zoom into that same security center Kyle just showed and show a representative example of what the local area network can look like within a building. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Ken. So now we've shown that we've documented all of our facilities and at the same time all of our IT infrastructure. And at this point, we want to set up our mission. So we could have a number of standing missions, but we're going to focus today on a new mission that has come up. Our Chief of Physical Security understands that we've got 2 high priority soccer matches in the next few days, and the fan bases or fans for those soccer teams have historically been adversarial depending on the outcome of the games. So he wants to be sure that he is got his rapid response teams ready to redeploy in the event that violence breaks out. So I'm going to ask Kyle, who's now playing one of my physical security operators, to create a mission using our Cyber Supply Line web app. He doesn't have to know anything about GIS or IT, but he's able to identify this mission in a way that allows the rest of the team to then link it to their activities in IT and cyber. Kyle, over to you.
All right, thanks, Brian. So as the security operator, I can use Portal for ArcGIS to search for and open a web app to create the Cyber Supply Line. So I select a priority and then I click on the 2 endpoints on the map where the mission will occur. And then I get a pop-up and I fill in the required information. So in this required information, I'm going to give the name of the mission, I'm going to give a quick description of what the mission entails. I can select the dates in between where I want the mission to occur. And then I want to fill in the organizations involved in this mission, specifically rapid response teams A, B, C, and D. And then I want to give the names of the team leaders who are heading up this mission, those being John Capps and Michelle Underwood. So I click off, and then the CSL is saved. And I now have a CSL with enough information for our team to work with. And once this is saved, a feature service is created that is available to all our users across the ArcGIS platform. Back over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Kyle. And this Cyber Supply Line tool is a free open source web application that we're able to provide to you if you're interested in using it or playing with it. It is completely configurable, so the priorities can be reconfigured, and that pop-up table that you saw can also be reconfigured to meet your specific needs to define your missions. But again, it allows someone with no GIS experience and no IT or cybersecurity experience to drop a couple of points on the map, linking organizations and people to create a mission definition. Now, with that created, and again, shared out to the entire platform, we want to move back over to our IT organization, who's going to show how we then link up to our IT infrastructure that's going to support this mission. Ken, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Now, using the information from the cyber supply line Kyle just created, we can create a primary and alternate communications path to link the two security centers. Using the info tool, I can click the line in order to gain the attributes. What this tells me is that John Capps and Michelle Underwood are the points of contact for this mission, and we're going to actually use them as our endpoints to create the primary and alternate path. Now, in order to do this, what I need to do is find their physical locations, and I'll search a join table in order to do that. So the current table that we're viewing right now is that join table. And before I actually search it, I want to take a moment to talk about how this table was created. As Brian alluded to earlier, we pulled information from our HR database, which provides employee names, their role in the company, as well as contact information. Using that facilities database Kyle talked about earlier, we're also able to find the physical location for each employee by their office or room location. And the last two tables that we pulled from actually came from the IT department. The first links individuals to a device as well as a serial number, which allows for further tracking and understanding, but also the IT network within the building, talking about all of the nodes within the building. Now, using join or using similar attributes across each of these, we're able to combine and create this join table so we can link people, organizations, devices to an IP address and physical location. Since we know Michelle Underwood and John Capps are the 2 points of contact, I can quickly select and search this attribute table and find out where they are. From here, I can zoom to each of their locations in order to select their endpoints to create the primary and alternate path. With the 2 endpoints selected, I can then propagate the physical location to their logical locations in ARC schematics, as seen here. From here, I can run a trace analysis in order to find the appropriate primary path. And as you can see, the primary path is highlighted in the logical view. But how does that look in the physical view? What I can then do is propagate it back to the physical view so we have both. Now that I've identified the primary path, I also need to create an alternate path by following a similar process. However, in this instance, I'll create a physical break in the logical network. As I stated, I'm putting in this physical break, and when I run this trace analysis, what you'll see is that the path is now rerouting to find the best or the shortest path. And then I can repropagate this back in, and let's take a look at it. With both the primary and alternate paths identified, I can save these services out as feature services and post them up to the portal to allow other users as well as organizations that are federated with our portal to use and consume the information. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Ken. Now, just to reiterate a couple of things that Ken just showed you. First of all, that cyber supply line popped up in his ARC map because he had already subscribed to the mission feature services. So when a new one comes up, it shows up in his tools right away. His standard operating procedure is, as soon as that happens, to immediately identify a primary and alternate communications path to support that mission. Now, in this case, we've greatly simplified this. In some cases, comms redundancy is done automatically by your routers. We've selected a scenario here where they actually have to make a determination of that. So we want to do that in advance to ensure that if our primary route goes down, that we do have an alternate available. And our IT person in this case knew that those two leaders, John and Michelle, were in charge of those rapid response teams to A and B and then C and D, and that all the people for those teams sat near them in the same buildings. If that isn't the case, then you would have to go in and select all the people individually or by organization, something along those lines. But again, as long as you have people and organizations and then link to the mission definition, you can find all the people and connect them via the network connections. Now, we modeled this using the physical infrastructure, but we could have done wireless by documenting our wireless access points. We could have done cellular communications by documenting the cellular towers and the handsets, or we could have even done radio with push-to-talk radios, etc., if we had documented that. So wireless can certainly be done just as well. Now that we have our IT infrastructure primary and alternate path identified, what we essentially do is take the IP addresses from those devices on those two pathways, we load them into our geo event processor, and now we're going to run our intrusion detection system through that geo event processor in order to identify any cyber threats that are coming against those high priority IP addresses. So Ken, over to you on our cybersecurity team. Kyle, I'm sorry.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm playing a role of a member of the cybersecurity team, and I'm using the Cybersecurity Center dashboard in order to monitor activity on critical communication lines between our two security centers. So first, I'll take a moment to explain the components of the dashboard that you're seeing. So first, in the top right corner, we have our shared situational awareness map. And this map includes the cyber supply line that I built out earlier. We're tapping into that feature service, as well as the two physical network routes, the primary route in the north and then the alternate route in the south. The map also includes our entire IT network and key devices on the network. We also have some tools that we're integrating from Red Seal, who is one of our cybersecurity business partners. And these tools allow us to monitor incoming attacks as they affect the mission. So the other map you see in the bottom left corner is showing a live stream of the locations where incoming cyber attacks are coming from. And the chart above that map shows the number of attacks per country as they're coming in. So I want to draw attention to the alert that just popped up. As you can see, we've configured this window of the dashboard to alert us of the cyber attacks that are mission specific, and it's indicating that there's a malware penetration into a router on our CSL. So I can use the dashboard to zoom in to the device, and then I click on the node to identify the vulnerability, and I can drill into the details using Red Seal. So looking at the details, I see that it's a known vulnerability that our IT team must have missed during the build out. So then I grab the ID and I search the National Vulnerability Database, which is the US government's repository of vulnerability management data. And I'll search the vulnerability database for patches. There is a patch that is available, and so I'll download it and I'll patch the affected device. Once that's done, I can then search for other devices that have the same vulnerability using the Cyber Query tool that's available in our dashboard. So I see that there are an additional 12 devices that have been affected with the same vulnerability. But instead of randomly beginning to patch them, I look for any that may be on the cyber supply line, and I'll fix those first. In a quick inspection, I can see that there's one on my primary route, as well as one on my alternate route that I can attend to first. And once I'm done patching those devices, I then send a notification to the security operations chief that there's been an intrusion and that it's been patched. And this alert is then sent out to the rest of the team through the dashboard. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Kyle. So a couple of things to point out. That map that was in the upper right-hand corner, that's our shared situational awareness map. And that's what gets shared across all the various different common operating pictures that we may have in use across our organization. The other thing you may have noticed is that when Kyle came online with our cybersecurity team, that map was already populated with the mission supply line, as well as the primary and alternate line, communications lines. So those are shared feature services that are, again, available across the entire platform. And those chat windows that he was using allows everyone in the organization to see what's happening in any situation without having to call each other up across different organizations or functional areas. So immediately the physical security team knew that there was a cyber attack coming against, their critical communications line, but they also saw that the cybersecurity team was taking care of that and was fixing it, and then sent out an alert that everything was taken care of. So everyone is notified in near real time about all the situations that are going on. So let's slide back now to the slides, and we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. So the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that we can link all of this data from across your organization to allow us to, again, connect people and organizations to their devices and to the network connectivity that they have. And by defining missions in that context of people and organizations, we can then tie the IT status and health and also the cybersecurity activity to your critical missions. And we can also do this for critical systems if you want to monitor critical systems, and we could do it for critical infrastructure as well. So in this data linkages context, what we're showing is the connection of mission and operational activities to organizations and people, organizations to people, people to their locations, people to the devices they use, devices to their locations, devices to their network connections in a logical context, how the logical network connects to the physical network or is represented by the physical network, and then how both of the logical and physical connect to the network devices, and then how those cyber threats and IT health and status issues connect to the devices. And through that, we can monitor impacted devices and identify impacted mission. So what do you need to do this? Well, these are a list of the tools that we use during this demonstration. ArcGIS Desktop map with Arc Schematic. We also have demos of ArcGIS Pro. If you're interested, we can in the future do demonstrations to show some cyber forensics analysis and use of military cyber symbology in ArcGIS Pro. We're using Server with Portal for ArcGIS and the Ops Dashboard along with the Geo Event Server. And we're using some, again, free tools that are available to you, the Esri Campus Viewer to model the building and the people assigned to the various rooms, as well as the Esri Cyber Supply Line portal application. And then you would bring your cybersecurity tools and data and integrate that, your IT health and status monitoring tools and data and integrate that, and your human resources data, integrate that, and all of this comes together. Now, we don't necessarily expect you to do all of this at once, but by thinking about the highest priority needs that you have and then looking for the tools and data that would provide the most bang for the buck to start with, we suggest just starting one step at a time, and as you implement or integrate the first set of activities, then review what would provide the next level of value add and do that in a step-by-step process as opposed to trying to implement this all at the same time. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Carl for questions.
Okay, we've got right now, it looks like we have about 3 questions that have come in. The first question is, what was the third-party intrusion software you referenced, and can you talk a little bit more about it?
Sure. So this is coming from one of our cybersecurity business partners, a company called Red Seal. Two of the capabilities that they provide are an intrusion detection system as well as a vulnerability scanning capability. So their vulnerability scanning capability scans your network on whatever periodicity you want to do that. Generally, it would be once a day, looking for known vulnerabilities and identifying the devices. That all gets databased and is then available to you for follow-up remediation. And then, of course, the intrusion detection system is sitting on a device or on your firewall at your boundaries, a network boundary, looking for incoming attacks. And again, we're taking this data and then pumping it through our geo event server with our high priority IP addresses to look for attacks that are coming against our highest priority devices supporting these missions. Now, what that means is it allows you to prioritize the work of your cybersecurity team, and you can do the same thing with your IT health and status. Generally, those teams are just working down a queue, whatever their list of things to do is, without any insight into the top priorities of the organization from a mission or systems perspective. So in this case, it allows them to focus on the highest priority things first, and then have others on the team continue that day-to-day set of remediation activities. Thanks, Carl.
Okay, we have another question that's come in. Can you talk about any examples concerning the cascading effects of a cyber event?
Yeah, Carl, so interestingly enough, we happen to have a cooperative research and development agreement with Idaho National Labs. And in that context, we're doing some research and development with them where we're applying these Cyber-GIS concepts and activities to critical infrastructure protection. And in that context, they are the premier organization for SCADA systems and cyber impacts on SCADA systems, or IDSs, I'm sorry, not an IDS, an ICS control systems. And in that context, we're looking to see what those cascading effects would be when there's a cyber attack against some part of the critical infrastructure. So let's say there's an attack against the electric system or grid in a certain area. We're then looking to model how that might impact the water systems and supplies, or say the local critical facilities like hospitals or police and fire elements. So we can model all of that again just by linking these connections together in the GIS, and then show what those cascading effects would be. Thanks, Carl.
Awesome. And I think, Brian, this question is in reference to your what do I need to do this slide, and it is, do I need all of the ArcGIS components to actually run this type of analysis?
No, Carl, you don't need it all. We showed a lot of the ArcGIS platform in this and how it can aid in these kinds of solutions and monitoring. But essentially, you need the ArcGIS desktop with ArcSchematic, and then you would need the ArcGIS server with GeoEvent in order to do the real-time monitoring of the cyber events. So those would be the two critical things that you need to start with.
Okay, we've got another question, Brian, and it's pretty open-ended, and we may want to address this privately after the fact, but it's can you talk in generally about some of the challenges an agency might come up against when implementing a solution like this, and about how long might it take?
Yeah, so that would depend on the capabilities that you already have available to you. So let's assume that your organization already uses GIS and has it implemented somewhere that you can get access to the tools and some basic GIS data. You would have to work with your IT organization to get access to their network and device information. And that could be a fairly simple integration, but it might be more complex depending on how they've stored their data or what tools they're using. And then you would also have to work with your cybersecurity team to get access to their cybersecurity monitoring tools. So if you have your own software development teams that can do that kind of integration for you, it could take you a few weeks. If you needed to contract out for support to help do that, obviously that would take longer to get the contract process going. But again, once you have the resources available for that integration work, you could, again, if you have these tools and data available to your organization, it would probably be a few weeks of integration work.
Okay, great. We do have a couple more questions that that we're not purposely ignoring. I think that they're probably a little bit longer than what we might want to do on this call, and we'll connect with you folks directly based on the emails that you provided us at registration, and can probably best answer some of those questions in that manner. And that said, we are going to close down. That's the end of our presentation. I just want to thank everybody for their participation, and that's all for now. Thanks.